Worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and now Buick. Plus the used car superstore. 12 new car brands, 900 used vehicles. One amazing buying experience. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. The Sheeler Motor Mile, now in Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Spring's here, finally. So visit Leesville Landscape Supplies for a slam dunk on your next home or business landscape project. Get the region's best mulch, plus decorative stone, propane, block, and hardscape materials for routine lawn care. Leesville Landscape Supplies has grass seed, fertilizer, straw, and topsoil, even hardwood mulch, dyed mulch, pine mulch, gravel, and sand. Start your spring project at Leesville Landscape Supplies at the corner of Water Lake and Leesville Road in Lynchburg, and pick there or have it delivered. Search 24/7 at LeesvilleLandscapes.com.
What's on your wish list for a great place to live? Most people look for excellent schools, safe streets, access to good housing, and well-paying jobs. But what if you could live in a community that would help you protect and even improve your health and the health of your loved ones? Where you could enjoy clean air, have access to ample clean water, and shop for reasonably priced healthy food. Would you like to feel safe on your streets, whether you're driving, walking, or riding a bike? Would you like to relax and exercise in accessible parks and be able to count on good public transportation? Increasingly, cities and towns across the country are making planning for good health a priority. Planners are working with public and private organizations to create an environment that will improve our health today and guarantee the health of our children tomorrow. Learn more at planning.org. That's planning.org. A message from this station and the American Planning Association.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
The ink hadn't even dried, or in our case, the video hadn't even been posted from our TroStall.com Fast Take to Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my LinkedIn page if you prefer to connect with me and us that way. But you knew this one was coming.
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
We are still gathering information about this, and I'd prefer to wait till next week when I have a chance to digest this a little bit more. But President Donald Trump, normally you can hear about him on 100.9 Lynchburg, 95.5 Bedford, and 106.3 FM, Gretna, Danville, Southside, and of course the VTRN app, or just the other stations on the VTRN Sports app that you normally check out. Donald Trump's order has been signed, an executive order that will limit athlete transfer movement once, cap player eligibility, 5-year period, require funding requirements for women's and Olympic sports, and regulate NIL collectives and their behavior. This according to Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger, On3, ESPN, and pretty much any other major outlet that gets involved. There are bigger questions about this, which is why in the world do we need political figures to be involved in sports? Don't dispute that. There's also this selfish side of me as a sports fan that hopes, I'm going to curse for a second. Let's get right, Ed. Hopes that this does something in college athletics. Again, I am not normally one who's sitting there going, yes, leaders, elected officials, more government regulation, more government involvement. I'm kind of the opposite of that. But it's so chaotic in college athletics, and the enterprise from a fan consumption standpoint would be a lot better. I don't blame any athlete who wants to get paid. I don't blame athletes for being tampered with and transferring afterwards when coaches do the same thing all the time. Will Wade, LSU, flirtations for months. If you want to call it flirtations, if you want to call it everything but getting it on, whatever you prefer in the terms of cheating and affairs. So we've had people that are, as Melissa McCarthy would remind us, people who've often been able to do that, but they didn't want other people to do it because that would mess up their level of control or would have to get redistributed. And that's not fun for those people that are in charge and have built their enterprise on that. But yet, I would also say this. The elected officials of the NCAA, and frankly, they're employed by and directed by the school presidents and administrators. So these are, again, people who have exposed one of the lessons that you may not want to teach your kids, but inevitably your kids are going to come to understand as they mature. I'm just exposing my kids to it sooner than later. Again, middle fingers to progressive parenting here in the Fast Lane, where we never tout the negatives and pretend like the world is rosy. There are a lot of cool things to the world that we lose sight of in our self-aggrandizing, me-induced environment. And look, I'm as guilty as anybody of that. But there's also realities that you have to understand. And oftentimes, people who have do not really act in the best interest of the enterprises. They act in their own best interest and preserving, which often means access continually and unchecked to dollar bills, y'all. So they don't like threats to that, not to what's the right thing. Now, backing from that to where we are today, Donald Trump's executive order that he signed. First of all, it's going to have to stand up to more court challenges that inevitably will transpire. Granted, if Trump's in office and the people in the courts and the Supreme Court in particular lean more toward the red, just like Donald Trump, there's a chance that these challenges will be upheld, at least the higher up you go. And people can challenge and they'll ping pong back and forth on different levels of appeals courts. And away we go up the totem pole till eventually maybe this stuff starts getting heard at a higher level and the executive order just gets backed up. That's kind of the way this can often work. But as somebody who wants college sports to have a level of organization, not bitter at players for getting paid. It's necessary. It's been time for a while. Too much money's gone around to everybody but the labor itself. That is unconstitutional since 1865, where people worked for free before then. Without saying the word you're not supposed to say, you can get out with us if you look at your history textbooks. It needed to end then. It does not need to continue in a multi-billion-dollar enterprise like college basketball and college football. So I'm fine with this from a sports standpoint. From a, what I want the government to be involved in, I don't like it. I don't like the government being involved in things any more than they have to. But from a, hey, let's create some level of organization, it's been past due for this. And my one caveat to where I will say kind of the crux of getting involved with this has largely been on this principle. A lot of the parties involved work for state universities, state and federally funded institutions. They have donations, obviously, that are coming in to, we'll just throw state universities out here, Virginia Tech, UVA, big spenders like Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Texas Tech, LSU. We could rattle off a whole host of power programs. There are a lot more of those than the Miamis, the Notre Dames, and the big spenders that are Duke in basketball, not football, but big spenders that are private universities. What they do in private, it's their own thing. But a lot of the big spenders who are keeping up with the Joneses are funded in certain areas and departments by government entities. And when that happens, if you're taking their money in certain cases, even if it's not sports related, they should reserve the right to be able to interject, which can often mean people interjecting. So that's the one caveat that I'll say to this. Again, TJ, I want to see more that comes out of this, but I don't like the government getting involved in things more than they have to. But selfishly, from a sports fan, if these things all are upheld, I'd like them just, if nothing else, in the fact that everybody kind of has a baseline of how to operate, whereas now it's just the complete wild, wild west.
I think what I like about this order is how much control it takes over the transfer pool. I think players should continue to get paid respectfully, but I do like that you can't transfer in two schools in one summer, because if you transfer a second time, according to what's been released, you have to redshirt at that point.
Correct. And I'm cool with that. Like, hey, you can transfer and you don't lose eligibility. I'm fine with that. But the lack of immediate eligibility, that does change the calculus for players because they have to determine if it's worth that, if it's worth just going straight into the professional draft, the organized professional draft, because this is professional too. But they have to use that calculation. And again, everybody's playing by that level of rule. And yes, there may be a little bit of, well, not a little bit, but
Lots of power.
or some semblance of that that's going back to the schools. But inevitably, this is all really in a spot where, if nothing else, if it prompts everybody to say, okay, now the labor is upset with this. Previously, it was the schools. If it prompts them to, I'm going to curse in the minds of some people.
Oh, no.
But if it's going to prompt them to make them employees and collectively bargain, curse words to some, then I'm for it. Again, I am as anti-union in a lot of cases as it gets. You can read into whatever political leanings that I want. Because over time, often unions become obsolete in their services. But in professional sports, they all exist. Some, I like the structure more than others. I like the NFLs. You're getting paid well, although there's a lot of injury risk there. But there's opportunity for teams to move on more easily, and it's very team structure friendly. I don't like baseballs because there's no salary cap. The NBA, for a while, was annoying, but they found ways to regulate it with the second aprons and the taxes, which has spread the talent out. And political commentary about the NBA aside, has made it a better product where more teams feel like they have hope that they could contend rather than back in the day of our guy.
Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven.
When LeBron did that, and there was like two teams that could contend. Oklahoma City, before Kevin Durant softened up and wanted to go just team up with Golden State, or Golden State themselves, or you could throw the Mavericks in for a chunk of time, and the Spurs too. Like, there were not very many teams. More in the NBA have that now, so it's good. Structure, though, brings all of this together, and that's what colleges lacked. And if worst comes to worst, labor and agents are more heavily involved than ever before. If worst comes to worst, and the agents interject, TJ, and say, hey, we're pumping the brakes on this, there are going to be holdouts, there are going to be issues that pop up. Look, which I'm sure that there could well be. Here's my flip to this. I would love the collectively bargained idea. And at that point, sure, there are holdouts in other professional sports. But in college athletics, if you fake injuries and hold out, you can get fined and not get paid. So you get hit on both ends by management. In college, it's the other way around. In the pros, you fake injuries, you're not getting paid. You're also getting fined if you try to not play and you hold in or hold out once games happen. That changes really quickly the calculus of a player. Really quickly. And in college, where some of these guys may not have earning power beyond college, it can change it real quickly. Again, I think we're heading in that direction. Yeah. If that is the end game of the Donald Trump executive order, a lot of people don't like it. I'm fine with that, even if it goes against a lot of the Trump supporters who don't want the idea of players being turned into laborers because that's pro-union. Again, shocking in the fast lane. We can see things in the middle area.
No, for sure. I think if I'm the NCAA, I'm working heavily on a rule book now because of this executive order at this point. I should have been a rule book already, but if I'm the NCAA, I'm making a rule book that doesn't affect baseball this season because it can. It shouldn't. And then as football season gets close, start imploring it right around the football season.
Well, again, there's so many other things that pop up. I mean, we're getting more information on this as time comes on. Executive orders are not actually legislation.
No.
They don't bind the judiciary, and it's hard to override a federal court injunction. But the higher you go, especially to appointed positions, if it's a red appointee, then they're more likely to side with the president. So that's where this could get sticky. And again, the end game may well be the colleges cave and just say, hey, we would rather collectively bargain, even if it means we're on the hook for insurance. We're on the hook for liability after careers end. Things they've tried to dodge by outsourcing their labor and not wanting to actually take it in-house. I'm fine with that because let's be real, they may have to get rid of some of the cushy jobs, the assistant associate athletic director for insert your title here. And if you go to certain schools, they have gazillions of these staffers with nebulous titles. That may change. That's the evolve or die principle in which the world operates. But it's going to make changes. And look, there are going to be schools and organizations that challenge this. And it's ironic because a lot of the ones that may want to challenge this are schools that are in the Trump belt. Texas Tech. That's a pretty red state. LSU, Louisiana, Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. When you think those states, you can think spending money in college sports. You can also think they don't benefit from regulated markets because let's be real here, they have much, much more
dollar bills, y'all,
than everybody else. And not all, but some of the Midwestern states that are in the Big Ten footprint are also in this category. Maybe not Illinois of the world, but Indiana at times, Ohio at times, certainly Nebraska, Iowa, those type of schools. And there are some swing states that are in there as well. But these are people where their political leanings may clash with the best interest of their football program relative to what Donald Trump's executive order would unfold. It makes it fascinating, but again, in game, I'm fine with it being the ultimate in game. So that's where we are right now. Meanwhile, we have experienced other developments in college athletics that we get to discuss right now in
It's time for Fast Five at Five-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
I do not at all mean for this to undermine the severity of mental health challenges in our country, and in our world. Because Chandler Morris cited that as a reason why he should have been granted an extra year of eligibility and playing limited snaps for TCU back in 2023. But from a, again, sports perspective, I am glad that the NCAA and the ACC and the court that ruled against Chandler Morris yesterday, I'm glad that that is the outcome that is transpired. Because I don't want to see more athletes. Because at what point, if Chandler Morris can cite mental health as a reason for extra eligibility, it opens a can of worms to so many other athletes to use that crutch. And I'm not saying that some of them are not severe. They are. But what I am saying is a lot of these athletes are influenced by agents. Do agents look for loopholes to find the best way to maximize somebody's financial position? Absolutely. You know the answer to that as well as I do. And in that sense, I am glad that Chandler Morris does not get an extra year of eligibility because it would open up an entirely different can of worms, which may be nullified by Trump's executive order if things get upheld, where you have 5 years to play 4 seasons of college football and college basketball, and that's it. But when you're opening these additional cans of worms, assuming things get in a different direction, I do not like that direction. Meanwhile, the other element to this number 4, do the Virginia Cavaliers maybe secretly wish that this was in fact the ruling, that Chandler Morris doesn't get an extra year of eligibility? Because outside of going to Clemson, and I mean, Morris could easily have unenrolled in Virginia and re-enrolled in Clemson, a la Xavier Lucas, who unenrolled in Wisconsin and re-enrolled at the U to play for Miami and was on the field in that national title game that you heard on the VTRN Sports app. You're home for great play-by-play, including women's Final Four tonight and men's Final Four tomorrow night in the championship games Sunday and Monday. That could have been the route. But when you've already added Bo Pribula and Eli Holstein to the quarterback room, at what point does that mess up the team chemistry for the Virginia Cavaliers? The dynamic of that. I'm sure one, if maybe not, maybe both of those players would have wanted to transfer out, especially Pribula, who's only got 1 year of eligibility remaining. And would he have wanted to transfer out because of the eligibility that could have been granted to Chandler Morris? It was very different, the tone around Virginia and their program, where it's we'll let the courts decide, as opposed to around Ole Miss and quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, where it was pretty obvious that Pete Golding, the Ole Miss head coach, and the Ole Miss staff and administrators, they were going to do everything in their power to convince the Mississippi courts that Chambliss should have been granted an extra year of eligibility. That's a different stance from Virginia. And frankly, I think it's justified. Morris was a good quarterback. He was part of elevating Virginia. But at no point did I sit there and go, Virginia could not find a way to duplicate that production and have other players. Virginia benefited greatly off the run game with Jamari Taylor. They clearly upgraded on the defensive line. They were so good at offensive line that they lost 4 or 5 players due to injuries and still managed to put a really good offensive line together. So there were a lot of pieces, and they lost wide receiver Malachi Fields, projected day 2 pick in the NFL draft. He transferred to Notre Dame, and Virginia did not miss a beat pass catching wise from that in the tight end position. So there were a lot of pieces around Morris where, having watched Ole Miss, particularly in the playoffs, I think a lot of it was on Trinidad Chambliss. That kid was a superstar that elevated them. So there should have been, from a business sense, greater tolerance and greater efforts made to accommodate a football player who is in more of a difference maker. Morris made some, but to me, Chambliss was much more of one for Ole Miss. Speaking of transfers, by the way,
Number 3.
a couple of them have come when it comes to the Virginia Tech Hokies. You touched on this yesterday in the fast lane, TJ, but Christian Gerdak entered the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Today, Jaden Shute also entered the transfer portal. Gerdak's probably the only one that really surprises me. I think we all saw the writing on the wall for Neoclis of Dallas when he wasn't even being played toward the end of the year. And then Jaden Shute, having been at the game against Florida State, where the Noles just took it to Virginia Tech, and that's when you realize, okay, this team's probably not going to the big dance. And they did not, as you heard on the VTRN Sports app, your home for March Madness. Virginia Tech, Jaden Shute was the biggest liability for them. That's to whom Luke Laus at Florida State was referring when he basically said, we found a scab, and he hated the analogy, but that was his basic term. A spot where you could just keep picking at it and picking at it and picking at it, and it exposes a weakness and a wound. And we're going to keep attacking that. That's what was said about Jaden Shute defensively by Florida State. And when that happened, I think at that point, you have to know in the back of your mind, he may return to Virginia Tech, but probably not for what the guy thinks he's worth, because there is a clear liability that one ACC team exposed, and they had seen it on film, which means other teams had exposed it, and the book had kind of been out on that one over the course of the season. Christian Gerdak's the one, a 4-star recruit. He's a big man. They're hard to come by. That's the one where alone it's not an issue. Maybe he just wants more money than Tech's willing to face. But if you add in an Amani Hansberry and a Ben Hammond, who I think should be the more prioritized returnees to Virginia Tech, if Hansberry and Hammond also go in, at that point you go, okay, is the clock ticking on this experiment with Mike Young at Virginia Tech? Or they're just going to be dealing with a lower caliber ACC roster because of the funds and resources that have been calculated and allocated.
I definitely think if Virginia Tech gets in Wake Forest waters, where it seems like every player is transferred at this point, even your star player in Harris and LCA star Sebastian Aiken, I think if it gets to that point, if I'm the Hokies, I start to panic. But Hansberry's managed to stay. Hammond's managed to stay. Losing Gerdak is a loss as far as big men go, but I think you can make up for the losses of Jaden Shute and even Neo as well.
By the way, missed opportunity for both Bryson Gordon of newsadvance.com and John Manson from AseaofRed.com. Of course, we were all over this one in
Number 2.
Division II star Dylan Clausen, committed to Liberty. I think we can put to bed the height challenges for Liberty, at least for now. Who knows who else they'll add. But Clausen's 6'8". And then it's not Liberty adds commitment, as AseaofRed.com points it out, and their work is fantastic there. It's Liberty registers commitment from JUCO forward Sean Register Jr. The reality for both of these is they are wing players who have great versatility. They have proven production, and you presume they are hungry to continue testing themselves moving up the ladder. Look, I like it if I'm Liberty. You're losing a Brett Decker Jr. to the transfer portal because of that. More on this in just a moment. So you add those two commitments, you register one from Register, and you add one from Dylan Clausen. It's not all of the picture for Liberty basketball. But when you factor in Eli Sankum, you factor in what's going to no doubt be a home run in Ty Cobb. I couldn't resist that analogy either. It was just too easy. It was teed up right there for me to swing and connect and hit it. All the Ty Cobb analogies coming. But for Liberty, the pieces are coming together. They'll add more. I'll be curious what else they bring in. But so far, these look like the type of additions where, again, it's the Richie McKay's evaluation and culture fit you start to trust. And for Liberty, you bounce back to that. Also, their openings, I'm sure Zach Cleveland's brother Noah is probably the one where you're going to sit there and, like, if he's the one who commits to Liberty, nobody would be shocked if that one happens. Like, that's the one you're almost expecting. That would be like, it's again, like Decker leaving. You're shocked if it doesn't happen with that. But here's one more nugget. Dylan Clausen committed to Liberty. He's represented by the same agency that represents Brett Decker Jr.
Yeah.
And someone came at us, and I don't begrudge the question. We appreciate all of them at TJ_Wilkerson8 and Fastlane Edlane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But somebody brought us this question about, do you think Richie McKay is that shallow by talking with, XL Sports Management? My throat is parched. I'm not eating food today because I'm fasting. More on that in a moment. Good Friday fasting. First time I've ever done this, by the way. So, And my throat parch is getting in the way. Just please forgive me. So it's not that Richie McKay is that shallow. Here's how this probably went. XL came to Liberty and said, here's what we're starting to get as the market for Brett Decker Jr. I'm pretty sure Liberty said, yeah, we're probably not going to be able to match that. And then they said, well, no problem. We have other candidates. Would you like to start doing homework on those particular candidates? And it may not be Richie McKay. It's, could well be, the front office for Liberty. They have people as well. This is part of the job. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's looking at potential candidates and playing the hypothetical game. It's kind of the legal tampering of the NFL where if he's available, what would the market be and how would it look like? Everybody's doing it. I wouldn't be shocked if that's, in fact, what transpired. Meanwhile, we can rule out one name for North Carolina in
number 1.
Tommy Lloyd. It was announced today he has agreed to a new extension. 5 years, $7.2 to $7.5 million per year to remain at Arizona. So I feel good about this one. But people have talked about Dusty May. If he is a non-pressure guy, Michigan basketball, where you have all the resources, but Michigan football sucks up the oxygen, that's hard to lead. I still maintain, again, the story of the week, another big story of the week was Jaden Ivey, the release from the Bulls and everything around Pride Day and Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan, to me, still seems like the logical fit for North Carolina. And the Tommy Lloyd news only exacerbates that. He announced it right before the Final Four, probably right when the terms of the contract came in. 7.2 to 7.5 is not a lot in college football. It is for a college basketball coach. Not saying it's guaranteed, but Billy Donovan seems like the candidate that would jump off the map to me most for North Carolina as being a logical fit. But it doesn't hurt to drag it out with Dusty May. It doesn't hurt to drag it out with others because that gets you closer to the end of the NBA's regular season, at which point the ability to pry Donovan away would become more logical.
No, I think the UNC job just got very interesting after this Floyd extension.
No doubt it definitely did. Meanwhile, our discussions in the fast lane will get more interesting when we return because Bob Alvis of the Sports Buffet podcast slated to join us. We'll discuss Resurrection Week. He is a believer, as am I. So we're open to touching on that. We will touch on some spring sports overview, and we'll see how much energy I can maintain fasting through the entire Good Friday fasting. That when we return here in the Fast Lane, VTRN Sports app, and Asset Smart Speaker, Open VTRN Sports.
Mark Dalton here with the Terry Auto Group. If you don't love your car, then you're simply just driving the wrong one. At Terry Volkswagen, Terry Subaru, Terry Auto Outlet, and the Terry Clearance Center, we've got the perfect new or used car for you. We make your car buying experience easy. Need help with imperfect credit? No problem. Our team works hard to get you approved and back on the road. Because when you shop at Terry, you drive away happy. Visit us at any of our 4 locations or online at terryautogroup.com. Terry Auto Group. You'll love our cars.
Do you love the 80s? Whether you were Team Madonna or Prince, this night is for you. Hi, I'm Kelly Diaz with Casa of Central Virginia, inviting you to Retro Rewind, our totally rad 80s party for a great cause. Join us April 11th from 6 to 10 at the Boonesboro Ruritan Club for an awesome 80s DJ, arcade games, dance floor, and more. Best of all, every ticket helps CASA volunteers advocate for children who have experienced abuse or neglect in our community. Grab your friends, moonwalk over to cvcasa.org, and get your tickets before they're gone.
Whether you're facing a tough season or looking for support to overcome life's obstacles, Central Virginia Counseling is here for you. Central Virginia Counseling is accepting new clients at both Lynchburg locations on Wigington Road and Timberlake Road. And telehealth is available anywhere in Virginia. Serving children, teens, and adults, our counselors are equipped with diverse skill sets to help you on your journey. For more information, visit us at centralvirginiacounseling.com.
Are you sick of running your dryer longer just to dry your clothes? It might not be a dying appliance. It might be a clogged up dryer vent. Call Black Goose Chimney Service to find out. Their certified ventilation specialists don't just diagnose chimneys. They also clean dryer vents through the entire ventilation system. Get peace of mind as you're protected from lint clogging your dryer vents, one of the most common causes of house fires. Call Black Goose Chimney Service today and visit blackgoose.net to schedule your dryer vent cleaning.
Are you tired of the advertising rep who never takes no for an answer and always comes back well after you've said no?
Yeah, hi, it's me again.
Then visit InsaneRadioDeals.com. You can shop for advertising on your terms. That's right. Not only can you get the best deals on restaurants, retails, and experiences at InsaneRadioDeals.com, get your advertising there as well. Get packages for 1, a blend, or all Virginia Talk Radio Network platforms. When you purchase your package, you'll be assigned a producer to help customize your message that gets results. Thanks to InsaneRadioDeals.com.
The Virginia Talk Radio Network reaches more people than any other Lynchburg-based media company. Call Melinda at 434-534-8500. Let us tell your story.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I didn't always like it when this happened, but I'm going to do it here in the Fast Lane. TJ, I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
You down for another Fast Five at 5-ish after Bob Alvis? Because we had news that just keeps breaking left and right.
Absolutely.
We weren't even able to get to all of it in the first edition of the Fast Five at 5-ish. So we're going to get to another round in just a moment. Like, I'm not joking when I say this. There's one that was from earlier today. There are 3 other nuggets that have all broken in the last hour, but the Donald Trump news and everything else have all kind of popped up. So we have been negligent in that. But we have also been negligent, thanks to March Madness, in connecting with somebody who hopefully is willing to grant us forgiveness. I'm a believer in Christ. I'm unashamed of it. Look, it's a free country. Everybody can believe what you want or not believe what you want. But I can tell you personally, it's been something that has helped me tremendously. I have plenty of anxiety and competitive challenges and juices, but it has helped me work through those along with help. By the way, I'm speaking with Central Virginia Counseling about taking even further steps for being my best self. So we'll keep you updated as that transpires. But Bob Alvis, he too is a believer. And so we're glad to welcome him back in to the Fast Lane once again. We are looking at some point to start a Faith Fridays here in the Fast Lane. I know it's been kind of choppy in the Fast Lane because of college baseball and March Madness and our schedule, but it's something we're angling to do. By the way, if you're a business and would be interested in sponsoring that, where we have different people on and we talk sports, but we talk about their faith as well. FastLaneEdLane@gmail.com or FastLaneEdLane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to get connected with us. We'd love to discuss this concept with you. Bob Alvis with us here in the Fast Lane. Bob, first of all, I don't go happy Good Friday because it's a day of sombrance and remembrance, much like Maundy Thursday was yesterday. But it's Resurrection Weekend, and it does culminate on a happy occasion if you're a believer with Easter Sunday. So we'll open it up for you. How comfortable you are in sharing with us the role of faith in your life and in what you do with the Sports Buffet podcast and bringing us great coverage of local and in particular high school sports.
What do you want to know? That should tell you all you need to hear.
You're comfortable in. I like it, first of all. So your background.
I did get concerned when I saw the Twitter or the X lead up when it said there was a math equation there. And I'm like, you promised me no math. I said I'd do anything but math.
Yeah, I am not very good with, complex math, Bob. To get my, usher on for a moment, I must confess, I can read spreadsheets, sales reports, calculate spots and messages for our clients, and even, balances for banks and business statements and charts for projections and sales. Anything beyond that, my mind begins to just go different ways. And look, I can pray all I want. I am not praying that problem away. I just have to pray for people to assist with that problem.
You better pray that the Lane children are good by the time they get in 5th and 6th grade with math, because that math can be killer to an adult.
Oh my goodness, it definitely can. I had to. It was a labor to get through class with that, and I had some generous teachers in high school and college. If it wasn't for their generosity, I may or may not have made it that far. But they tutored and may have taken some sympathy on me. Bob, we're outspoken though with our Christian faith here. It's Resurrection Weekend here, and again, our listeners and anybody who listens to the Fast Lane, we try to be as open as possible. People are free to believe. We don't. I'm not a it's not my place in the Christian faith to tell people they're going to hell. That's what God gets to do. I don't have to worry about that burden, and I'm very blessed and thankful for that. But it has helped me with a level of peace that I have not had. How much has your Christian faith helped you to be a better person and to be a better contributor to what we have local sports-wise in the area?
I'm a better friend, I'm a better son, and I'm a better interviewer, because I think a lot of it is, for me, reading the room with high school coaches. You can tell when some people don't want to talk, and I know we have to talk to people at certain times, but I know when to ask a certain thing and what to ask, because at the end of the day, these guys are doing the same things that you and I do. They have normal jobs. They're not getting paid, thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of dollars to coach, except for Matt Klein at LCA. I think he's getting paid millions and millions, but everybody else, they're thousandaires, not millionaires, or hundredaires, maybe.
Relative to the cost per hour, it's like the 10-aires because there's not much, and you factor in the amount of money they work. But so I'll ask you this as well. And again, I have no problem with another confession. The granting grace to people is something I have really had to work on personally, and not being judgmental and granting grace for people when things don't go my way. I'm impatient, type A, all the pitfalls that come with the successes of that. How much has your faith helped you grant grace to the people you're interviewing? When you mention reading the room, understanding that sometimes there are times where we have to ask the difficult questions, but when you may not get quite the depth or the answer you want, you have grace because you understand what they're going through.
Yeah, I think I kind of struggle with that sometimes because we're all humans and we want to hear what we want to hear. And when you don't hear what you want to hear, you figure out, can I ask the question a different way? But at the same time, you're like, for me at least, it's like, dang, do I want to keep a good relationship with Coach Best or Coach Monroe or Coach Klein or Coach Cruz? Yeah, I think I do. So I'm probably not going to be annoyant about it. I'll get the answer. Maybe it wasn't the answer I wanted, but it's still a good answer.
Well, and how much of this is also, and again, there's some interviewing tactics here with Bob Alvis because he's been doing this for a while with high school coaches and players. But you mentioned not getting the answer you want. I would equate it this way, and this would probably be my biggest caution to like the Bill Belichick Lombardi thing in North Carolina. I get how they were difficult with the media in Boston because up there it's a different kind of media. But in the South, you don't really have to be that way. You can be nice. You can give a non-answer. You can give kind of a circular answer with not all the information. And we may press a little bit, but after a while, we'll let it go as opposed to trying to ask you 20 times to trip you up.
I think the media has become so different because if you look at the Liam Cohen press conference post-game when they lost to the Bills, it got really, I don't want to say weird, but really unmedia-ish from what we used to do because I believe that one lady just told him to keep his head up, blah, 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 blah. Then you go listen to other interviews with maybe like a Joe Mazzulla and yep. And then you're waiting for more and all it is yep. So I think, I think it depends on, do you have an agenda? And I think a lot of people pick up on it. I think Joe Mazzulla, by the way, is just being Joe Mazzulla. But I think a lot of people can see through people maybe now early better than they used to, if that makes sense. And I think on the high school level, like I said, these are people that you could see at McDonald's. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll go interview somebody or break bread at somebody at a local restaurant. I don't think Bill Belichick and, every reporter that covering North Carolina is going to do that. So I think it's different because they're regular people like you and me, people we're going to deal with on a regular basis. It's different than a college or professional relationship with the media in my eyes.
So that's a great point, though, from Bob Alvis of the Sports Buffet podcast here in the Fast Lane. We're starting a new thing here in the Fast Lane, Faith Fridays. We touch on faith. There's plenty of sports that's interwoven into this and kind of how it all ties together. But you mentioned being out and being present in the community. Like, I'll give an example here. A couple weeks ago, they had the Sci-Fest over at Randolph College for Pi Day 3.14314 on March 14th. And they had that. They had the weekend. They had a bunch of activities. My kids love learning, love science. We went out and did that. And I saw Matt out there with his kids. His wife, Lindsay, was part of doing some Lego camp. She does some Lego clinics, which is a really cool thing that's done. But you're out there in the community and you're seeing them in a different light and in a different element. And I could be wrong. When we ask difficult questions with Matt or with football coaches, any sports, most of them understand we have a job to do and there's a mutual respect. But there's also the fact that, look, we're all people that are living in the same community, trying to make it as good of a place as possible with whatever role we take on.
And I've kind of tried to do a little bit what you're doing too, not necessarily the Faith Friday, but I'll break it down to where I'll interview coaches and I want them to tell stories or whatever. And I'll I've done one with Coach Sink, I've done one with Coach Klein, I've done a few, but it kind of makes it into where you're humanizing yourself and you're humanizing them. And the biggest thing for me is, to get way off tangent now, my girls will sometimes tell me, Dad, you're religious. And I'll be like, I'm not religious, I'm relational. And to me, when you are religious, you're more of following rules. When you're relational, I'm just treating you like I would, treat somebody who I would want to see Christ in me being a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point. There is And again, this is one of my biggest beliefs in life. God's going to make the final judgment on people. I don't have the burden of having to do that. And it's one of the blessings, I believe, of my Christian faith is I don't judge people of, oh, you're going to heaven or you're going to hell. I don't have to worry about that. And I'm very thankful that I don't have to have that heavy burden if you really think about it. But from that perspective as well, you mentioned the relational side of things and connecting with people. How much of that has also, and again, your Christian faith, Bob, has been this idea, and I think it's a valid one, of how you carry yourself around these people is a reflection of your faith, and it probably is heightened more when you're around them in tension moments, whether that's leading up to a big game or right after an emotional win or a draining loss.
I think it has broken down more into my personal life, which carries over into the other aspects. But I think to me, when because I became a Christian later in life, I was in my 30s when I became a Christian. I'm 46 now. I think at the end of the day, you have a life change and it reverts to everything. I was a selfish person. I'd always be good to Ed Lane or TJ Wilkerson, but I was a selfish person. But once I surrendered, I became less selfish. And it probably makes me more compassionate when I do interviews, because I'll be honest with you, if we are going to interview the winning coach or the losing coach, I'd rather take the losing coach because I feel like I can show more compassion. Everybody wants the winning coach because I feel like that's easy. And I'm talking championship, season-ending loss, buzzer beater, something like that. But I'm always more for the losing coach because I think it's easier to be compassionate than it is to be celebratory for me.
See, I think that's so great, though, to bring that up, because you learn more about these coaches and the way they carry themselves and what they value. And I mean, again, you see them sometimes in some of their most painful moments, but the graciousness that they grant to us is another reflection that, sometimes you get some stuff that you don't deserve in life. I think ultimately, as a Christian, the biggest obvious one is this Easter weekend and everything that signifies around that. But just there are other things in life where sometimes you're granted some grace and you're granted things that you may not deserve, but clearly you're glad to have them as gifts.
100%. And I'm probably the worst person to talk about with Easter, because to me, Easter is a opportunity to where I'm thankful for what Christ did for me. But it's almost like, I'm not having turkey on Sunday or anything, but it's almost like I combine Easter to Thanksgiving for me personally. But I do understand, obviously, there's a big significance in Easter. But for me, it relates to, I'm going to be thankful to Ed Lane because we're both, brothers in Christ, so to speak. But I'm going to be thankful that God made me a brother, as opposed to, hey, there's an egg, go pick it up.
For sure. I think that's such a crucial point. And again, there's a remembering thing about the entire weekend. I've deepened in my faith. This is the first year I've done fasting on Good Friday. It's been a challenge. I haven't eaten it all today, except for at the Good Friday service. I did take the wafer and dip it in the cup for communion. But I think I get a little exception for that one on the fasting today. But the rest of it is no food. I can have drink. I can have, coconut water, hydration, all that. And I have my regular daily supplements, but no food. And it's Maundy, Thursday, yesterday. And as I've aged, I've started to do that. And you're a dad of two girls. I'm a dad of two 7-year-old boys. But as I've gotten older, maybe some of this is just you become a parent and you start thinking about things beyond just your selfish interests. But I've tried to think in terms of, I can't just tell my kids to behave a certain way. If I'm going to do that, there needs to be an effort to model it, even though we all sin and fall short of the glory of God.
John Patterson, who used to be the head basketball coach at LCA, told me words I will never forget. The way you treat your daughters are going to be the way they're going to be looked to be treated down the road. And for me, some of your listeners are old enough to probably remember Scared Straight, when the people went into the prison and,
I remember that.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to make you still young, but Scared Straight is pretty much, hey, don't go this road. And you talk about the Scared Straight moment for me, to where it took my head and put it back where it should be. That was it. And I think that God brings those people into our lives. I don't think there's one Billy Graham out there. I don't need to be Billy Graham.
No, you need to be Bob Alvis, because you have your own gifts and they connect with people in a, so I mean this when I say this, you have your own gifts. They connect with people in a certain way. Like for years, like for me, the goal, and look, in your sports media, you aspire to be certain people. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I deepened my Christian faith where it's, look, if I get to different levels or those opportunities open up and God opens those doors, I'll be glad to walk through if I pray and God directs me in that way. But it's right. And no longer am I living for that. It's more, I'm living to be the best version of myself for him in this moment. And that's what he needs somewhere else, even though in my little finite brain, I'm not completely close to being able to comprehend who all gets impacted by it, nor do I really need to, because that's just for my own ego, and that's not the point of it.
And at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, and this may be stubbornness on my end. I don't care what other people think of me or my faith, because if I share, that's all I can do. I mean, I'm not here. The last thing I want to do is beat you over the head with a baseball bat, because that's assault, and Lynchburg Police Department and I will probably have some discussions. But it's not my job to make anybody else Bob 2.0. In fact, for the world, I think it would be better if we don't have any Bob 2.0s or 1.2s or whatever. So, it's just my job to share. But at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't like what I say, I often say, I know he said I'm not a role model, but my hero of heroes in the sports world is Charles Barkley. Maybe because he doesn't have a filter. But, at the end of the day, I don't think he is concerned about my opinion, your opinion, or the guy down the street's opinion of what he said. And, I think once you surrender that of, hey, I'm not worried about what somebody else thinks, you feel better.
Bob Alvis of the Sports Buffet podcast is with us here in the Fast Lane. We have him regularly, and we talk high school sports quite often, and we will get more into the X's and O's on spring sports as they continue to unfold. A lot of the teams that are normally at the top in lacrosse, tennis, soccer, girls and boys, softball, baseball, and others, track and field. There are familiar teams there, but that doesn't mean there aren't different storylines, and we will have a long runway now through the beginning of June, really, to start getting into all that with Bob Alvis of the Sports Buffet podcast. But I wanted to shed light and wrap it up on this. You've done it with Jeff Woody. You did it with Jeremy Sink. You've had these that have popped up, and I love it when you do story time. Brad Bradley of Heritage was on that list as well. What was the inspiration of that and giving people a chance to tell their own story and, frankly, go in deeper into people that we resonate with from high school sports?
I think you are going to get this more than a lot of people would. And I think you always, if you're doing like what we do, you always have to find something that you do that's different.
Yes, very much.
That was my thing, because the internet is wonderful in terms of there's no limit. Like at the end of at 6 o'clock, your show, well, 6:05, whatever, your show has a time to where it's going to go off. Last time I checked, the internet still works. It doesn't go off. It doesn't expire. And, I felt people like to talk about themselves. People like to share stories. And, B, for me, it's about, how many names can you mention type of thing too, because I don't know what Jeremy Sink knows. I don't know what Matt Klein knows. I don't know what Brad Bradley knows, and I don't know who they know. And, it's funny because I think I've done about 10 of these, and each person I've learned something different. It may not be a fact that's going to help Bob Alvis in life, but I have learned something different on each person that I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I did know Matt Klein was a Michigan fan, so he'll be watching with bated breath tomorrow. But, just to pick up something like, he came from a family of coaches. He has 3 uncles that all coached. So, stuff like that. Why did you get into coaching? Where did you go? Who was your first job? Stuff like that. That's just, I find that interesting because I'm old too. And I know a lot of these people that other people are talking about.
Yes. Well, you have great stories and wisdom, and it can go back to different times and bring that knowledge and information to us so that people, I'm a little younger than you are, but I'm older than TJ Wilkerson. But when you start to bridge that, that's how the stories are passed down, and you start to gain appreciation for the traditions that we have in our area, particularly around high school sports.
And one more thing, what if it could help somebody else? What if I interview somebody and maybe Ed Lane mentions that nugget on a broadcast? I don't want credit for it, but I'm glad I got to help Ed Lane. Or I'm glad I got to help ABC, whoever the fact is. If I could interview somebody, I get to help so-and-so, that's all it means to me. And maybe that goes back into the faith, because the last thing I want to do is, please do not have a cloud that says Bob Alvis is great. If you think I'm wonderful, that's fine. But I'm not doing anything to be like, hey, let's have the people that you're carrying out the king on the now I can't remember. You've got me all confused with words. But yeah. Don't carry me out on a throne. I'll just, do what I do type of thing. But it's not about me. And I think when you get to the point in life where it's not about you, that is what a lot of people need to do, and a lot of people don't do.
Yes, that is a very well said thing from Bob Alvis, and a great way to wrap up our chat with him today here in the Fast Lane. Bob, we appreciate your time. We wish you great joy this Resurrection weekend for the gifts that you don't deserve, like I don't and nobody else does, but that we're glad to take. Thank you for your time. Thank you for going in a different direction as well today on what's kind of the debut for us of Faith Friday.
Anytime, anything you ever need me to do, Ed, I am all willing to do it.
We are grateful for it. Bob Alvis of the Sports Buffet podcast with us today in the Fast Lane. When we return, Fast 5 at 5, Part 2. Developing stories. We'll get to those next here in the Fast Lane.
We are making it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years with the best selection, value, finance options, and exceptional service. Plus 900 pre-owned vehicles all in one location. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one-stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with finance options for every budget. 900 used vehicles in stock now. More than any other dealer in the area. Hurry in for straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Why wait? Make it happen at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Spring's here, finally. So visit Leesville Landscape Supplies for a slam dunk on your next home or business landscape project. Get the region's best mulch, plus decorative stone, propane, block, and hardscape materials for routine lawn care. Leesville Landscape Supplies has grass seed, fertilizer, straw, and topsoil, even hardwood mulch, dyed mulch, pine mulch, gravel, and sand. Start your spring project at Leesville Landscape Supplies at the corner of Water Lake and Leesville Road in Lynchburg. And pick there or have it delivered. Search 24/7 at LeesvilleLandscapes.com. Lunchtime just got an upgrade. Stop by Macadoo for our $8.95 weekday special and grab a legendary sandwich at an unbeatable price. Choose from your favorite classics, the Coney Island, Betty Bob, Ragtime, or Stogie. Classic sandwiches packed with savory meats and flavors in between fresh bread. Make it a meal by pairing your sandwich with a sidekick, a warm cup of soup, or crispy chips. Great food, cozy vibes, and the best deal in town.
It's time to share great food and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Macadoo's.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Plenty of large insurance companies know something. If you're injured in an auto accident, it can feel overwhelming. They've defended themselves in thousands of personal injury cases while you've never been there. Thankfully, I have. Hi, I'm Dustin Rosser with Trost Law. I began my legal career defending insurance companies before joining Trost Law. I know how insurance companies think and how to navigate the complex legal system. So if you're injured and need someone to fight for you, just call me at 777-HURT and visit trostlaw.com.
Are you tired of static? Wish you could take your favorite Virginia radio stations with you wherever you go? Then you need to discover the power of streaming. That's right. You can now easily listen to the Virginia Talk Radio Network for insightful discussions and local news.
From the VTRN News Center, I'm Bill Trefiro.
And groove to classic hits on Rewind 1039. All from your smartphone, tablet, or computer. No more fiddling with the dial. Just download your favorite radio app. Search for Virginia Talk Radio Network or Rewind 1039, and you're ready to go. Stay connected with your community.
Good morning. This is Kimberly McBroom in the WDBJ 7 Newsroom with our Virginia Talk Radio Network news update.
And enjoy the music you love, anytime, anywhere.
Every move you make.
Streaming the Virginia Talk Radio Network and Rewind 1039. It's that easy. Virginia Talk Radio Network, Rewind 1039. Now streaming.
Hey gang, this is Bud Foster, former defensive coordinator for the Virginia Tech Hokies. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle BT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Development. Some of them we didn't get a chance to discuss, others that are new, but we're doing another edition of the Fast 5 at 5-ish. And if we go a smidge over, don't worry, we'll get you right as quickly as possible to women's basketball coverage for the Final Four, South Carolina and UConn. That game tips off, I think, at 6:30. So we've got
all stations.
On all news talk stations and sports talk here on the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But
it's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m. Ish. because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
It's an interesting year when it comes to Diamond Sports over at Liberty University, and we'll get into this more with John Manson from AseaofRed.com. Softball lost to Missouri State. They also lost over the weekend to midweek action to UNC. They're solid, 9-4 in Conference USA, but this is not a banner year for them. They lost a ton off of last year's team and the elevated role for KK Madry. It's going to take time, obviously, presuming she sticks around. And Liberty's well-funded, but it's very different. Meanwhile, baseball, they got the road win at NC State midweek. They swept Cellar Dweller for Conference USA, Florida International last week. They're in a much better and much more confident spot. Meanwhile, UVA baseball avoided a sweep at Boston College over the weekend. BC's won 3 ACC series, kind of an under-the-radar team in the ACC. UVA softball, they swept Pitt. They demolished them, really, in softball, 22-2 combined in those 3 games. Lady Who's quietly top 25 caliber softball team at 31-3 and 9-2 in the ACC. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech, they routed Boston College. They dropped the opener against Clemson last night. Baseball continues to be very up and down. Another big series against Miami this week. And maybe the most interesting one of them all, UVA men's lacrosse. That was a big win against Notre Dame last week. It was a defensive tussle in the 4th quarter. There really wasn't any scoring until about 2.5 minutes to go. Virginia scored 1. They added an empty net to win 11-9. But that's arguably the biggest win in a couple of years for Virginia men's lacrosse. I would still like to see a little more out of them to be convinced that they could make it in the ACC tournament and make a run. It's an uphill battle at Duke this coming weekend. That will go a long way toward convincing me. But if you can add one there, or against Syracuse, who's been a real surgent and strong team this year, or maybe North Carolina, then all of a sudden you start to go, okay, maybe this is a team that might make noise in the men's lacrosse tournament and contend for a spot in the Final Four, which is going to be held at Scott Stadium this year. Meanwhile,
number 4,
Oliver Rue is this 7'9" player who entered the transfer portal from Florida. He is a little U center, but super tall. Would it not be ironic if he wound up at Liberty, just with all the questions about Liberty's height? I don't think it would happen. They had the Caillou experiment, and that ended kind of with no real, the height was there, the athleticism was there, but the basketball skills never coalesced. That may be more likely the route for Oliver Rue. I would say this, Liberty, they are identifying players early in the transfer portal cycle. They need to add more, but they give you confidence that they may not be able to immediately replace what they lost, but you go, okay, there's something with which to work and could give them something to look forward to. Breaking news from the last hour in.
Number 3.
When they open the season at midnight to kick off the college basketball, or to tip off the college basketball season in the Field of 68 event, High Point and Liberty will open the event midnight, Monday, November 2nd. This is a quirky idea, but I like these type of ideas for schools of Liberty's stature. We've seen it before with midweek on the mountain for football. This idea is the latest example. I like this because it's a different way to set up. And oh, by the way, you're adding another prominent program. And you could argue High Point is in that classification that Liberty's in of being your non-power program schools that are the biggest spenders in basketball. Memphis has no results to show for it, but I put Memphis in that category as well. But Liberty's a high spender. So too are the High Point Panthers. These are the type of schools that should be competing against each other. Meanwhile, speaking of similar type of schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia,
number 2,
Terrence Hill Jr., who had the big game against North Carolina to score the upset, 34 points in the win against what was Hubert Davis's final game coaching North Carolina, has entered the transfer portal, but is open to returning. I think this is probably a courtesy to VCU. I would imagine that at 6'3" as a sophomore guard, a la Brent Decker Jr., although I think Decker is better, there is more likely to be a path for him to go somewhere else. And all this news has been leaked by Connor Odom, no relation to Ryan, of ADS Sports, although you might raise an eyebrow if somehow Terrence Hill Jr. were to wind up at Virginia. But I think it's a courtesy to VCU. I would still be surprised if he manages to stick around. Meanwhile, speaking of UVA,
number 1,
Red Autry named an assistant coach for the Virginia Cavaliers. Last year, Ratcliffe about this coming up next week in the Fast Lane. I like it. It's another basketball mind, and if anything, you're continuing to churn over the staff. You lost Griff Aldridge to bring in Red Autry, finding different roles for people, not to mention Malcolm Brogdon, the special advisory role for Virginia. you have to be willing to turn over your staff a little bit to get fresh voices and outside perspectives in at different times. Meanwhile, fresh voices, you'll get that in March Madness as we turn to that right now to wrap up the Fast Lane and wrap up the Virginia Talk Radio Network's coverage of the Fast Lane today. We're back Monday afternoon at 5. Meantime, we kick it on to men's and women's Final Four action, starting with the women right now on the VTRN Sports app.
So, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney.